The last night in the house. Have you ever stood in a place where everything important already happened, yet nothing was left to do except say goodbye? In this video, I want to tell you about the last 2 weeks of my life in the United States, selling a house, holding a marriage together, watching my children absorb emotions they never learned in school, and quietly practicing English while my heart was louder than my thoughts. This isn't just about learning English. It's about what we keep when we let go, and what memory you will always carry. The house was almost empty that night. No couch. No pictures on the wall. Just the sound of my footsteps echoing like they were unsure whether they still belonged there. I stood in the living room and realized something strange. When a house is full, you don't notice it breathing. When it's empty, it breathes back at you. You might think selling a house is paperwork, numbers, signatures. That's what I thought too. But on the last night, it felt more like standing at the edge of a chapter that didn't want to end quietly. Every corner had a memory. A child learning to walk. An argument that lasted too long. A laugh that came too late. None of those things were listed in the contract. My wife was in the bedroom, folding the last bag. The kids were asleep on the floor, surrounded by boxes like it was a strange indoor camping trip. I whispered to myself, very slowly, in simple English, "This is the last night." I said it again. Slower. Because sometimes your brain needs time to accept what your life already decided. Here's something science tells us, in a very human way. When your emotions are high, your brain's language center works differently. Stress pulls energy away from learning and sends it straight into survival mode. That's why, when your marriage feels fragile or your family is changing, even simple English feels heavy. It's not because you're bad at learning. It's because your brain is busy protecting what matters. That night, I didn't try to study. I didn't open an app. I didn't force vocabulary. I just named what I saw. Empty room. Old window. Quiet house. Short sentences. Real moments. This is how language is supposed to live with you, not against you. I walked into the kitchen. The light switch still worked, even though almost everything else was gone. That felt symbolic in a way I didn't expect. Some things stay useful until the very end. Like love. Like effort. Like choosing to stay present even when leaving hurts. You might be watching this because you're tired of starting over. With English. With relationships. With yourself. You tell yourself you've failed too many times to try again. But standing there, in that empty house, I understood something simple. Endings don't erase effort. They prove it existed. Before going to sleep, I sat on the floor next to my children. I listened to their breathing. I said one more sentence, quietly, almost like a promise. We will be okay. Not perfect English. Not perfect life. Just honest. That was the last night in the house. And strangely, it was also the first night I stopped being afraid of carrying the memories instead of the walls. Why this house matters. People often ask, why was it so hard to sell a house? As if a house is just wood, paint, and a mortgage. That question sounds logical until you've lived inside something long enough for it to learn your habits. This house in the United States didn't just hold our furniture. It held our patterns. And patterns are harder to pack than boxes. For 2 weeks, every room reminded me of a version of myself I had already outgrown. The man who moved in, hopeful but unsure. The husband who learned slowly that love isn't a feeling you keep, it's a behavior you repeat. The father who realized children don't remember what you say, they remember how you move through difficult moments. You might not think this has anything to do with learning English, but it has everything to do with it. Here's the uncomfortable truth most language channels don't tell you. When your life feels unstable, your brain resists anything new. Neuroscience calls this cognitive load. In simple words, your brain is busy carrying emotional weight, so it drops anything that feels optional, like grammar rules, pronunciation drills, or another video telling you to just be confident. That's why so many people quit. Not because English is hard. Because life is loud. This house mattered because it showed me exactly that. I noticed how my English improved not when I tried harder, but when I slowed down enough to let meaning catch up. One morning, while wiping the counter for the last time, I said out loud, "We built a life here. Not perfect grammar, but perfect truth." My wife heard it and nodded. No correction. No discussion. Just understanding. That's how real language works. It's not judged. It's received. Psychologists say memory is strongly tied to emotion. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the memory. That's why you remember a song from a breakup more clearly than a lesson from school. This house mattered because it was emotionally loud. And loud memories don't disappear just because you change locations. At night, after the kids fell asleep, my wife and I sat on the floor. No furniture. Just space. We talked about things we avoided before: fear, money, exhaustion. The quiet distance that grows when people are tired but still trying. I listened more than I spoke. When I did speak, my English came out slow, careful. I don't want to lose us. Simple sentence. Heavy meaning. If you're learning English right now and feel stuck, Consider this. Your brain learns best when it feels safe. Not excited. Not pressured. Safe. This house was safe, even in its final days. That safety allowed honest language to surface. I realized something else too. We don't miss places. We miss versions of ourselves that felt possible there. Selling the house felt like admitting we were no longer those people. But it also meant we survived becoming someone new. Before leaving, I touched the door frame. Just once. I didn't take a photo. I didn't record a video. I just said, "Thank you," in English. Because gratitude is one of the easiest emotions for the brain to translate. This house mattered because it taught me that learning language, love, patience, doesn't happen when life is perfect. It happens when life is real, and you stay anyway. And maybe that's the memory worth carrying. 2 weeks that tested love. Have you noticed how life waits until you are already tired before it asks the hardest questions? These 2 weeks in the United States didn't arrive with drama at first. No shouting. No explosions. Just quiet pressure, like air slowly leaving a tire while you're still driving. This part of the story isn't about selling a house yet. It's about how love behaves when routines disappear, plans shrink, and silence starts speaking louder than words, especially when you're trying to stay calm, stay married, and somehow keep learning English along the way. The first few days felt manageable. We told ourselves, it's only 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks of packing, paperwork, school changes for the kids, and decisions that sound small but feel permanent. My wife and I moved like a well-trained team, but something was off. We were efficient, not connected. Polite, not close. That's usually the first warning sign. By the way, not anger, but emotional efficiency. At night, when the kids finally slept, we sat across from each other, phones in hand, pretending to rest. I tried to read simple English sentences. Very basic. Today was long. I feel tired. I wasn't studying. I was translating my own emotions into a language that forced me to slow down. English became a speed limit for my thoughts. Here's a small piece of psychology that matters more than people admit. Under prolonged stress, your brain shifts energy away from empathy and reflection. It doesn't hate love. It just postpones it. That's why couples under pressure don't fight dramatically, they drift quietly. The brain says, survive first. Feel later. The problem is, later often never comes unless you interrupt the pattern. Halfway through the 2 weeks, we had a moment. Not a big argument. Worse. A misunderstanding that stayed unresolved for hours. The kind that sits between you like an invisible object on the table. You talk around it. You eat around it. You don't touch it. That night, my English practice was one sentence repeated in my head. Say something now. So I did. Slowly. Honestly. Not perfectly. I said what I felt without decorating it. And something softened. Not fixed. Softened. That matters. The kids felt it too. Children don't understand mortgages or relocation, but they understand emotional weather. One of them asked a simple question that landed like a punch. Are we still a family after the house is gone? No grammar book prepares you for that sentence. I answered in the simplest English I could manage, because clarity matters more than fluency in moments like this. Yes. Always. Short. Certain. Repeated. By the end of the second week, I realized this wasn't a test designed to break us. It was a test designed to reveal habits. How we speak when we're tired. How we listen when we disagree. How quickly we assume distance instead of asking for reassurance. If you're struggling to learn English while life feels unstable, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is prioritizing emotional safety. The trick isn't forcing more discipline. It's lowering the emotional noise. Simple language. Real moments. One honest sentence at a time. Those 2 weeks didn't make us stronger in a dramatic way. They made us more aware. And awareness, quietly practiced, is what love actually runs on. In the end, love didn't pass the test by being perfect. It passed by staying present. And honestly, that's the same way learning English works too. Selling without losing each other. Have you ever noticed how selling a house looks simple from the outside, but feels dangerous on the inside, like one wrong word could crack something much more important than a wall? During these 2 weeks in the US, I learned that selling a house is not really about the house. It's about how 2 people stand on the same side when pressure quietly asks them to turn against each other. On paper, the process was clean. Price. Inspection. Negotiation. Deadlines. Emails written in polite English that sounded calm but carried sharp edges underneath. But behind every message was a question neither of us said out loud. Are we still a team? You see, stress has a strange way of changing language. Neuroscience explains that when cortisol, the stress hormone, rises, your brain becomes shorter, sharper, and less patient. You don't speak to connect. You speak to defend. That's why couples argue more during big life changes. Not because love disappeared, but because the brain temporarily forgets cooperation. We felt that. Small decisions became big. Who answers the agent? Who signs first? Why did you agree to that price so fast? None of these questions were really about money. They were about control, fear, and the quiet grief of letting go. One afternoon, we sat at the empty dining table, no chairs, just boxes. The kids were outside. The house echoed again. I noticed my voice getting faster. Hers got quieter. That's usually a bad sign. Fast and quiet rarely meet in the middle. So I did something very small, almost stupidly simple. I slowed my English down on purpose. I said, "We sell the house, together." I paused. Then I added, "Not against each other." The sentence was not beautiful, but it was clear. And clarity is oxygen during stress. This is something language teachers don't always tell you. Slow language calms the nervous system. When you speak slower, especially in a second language, your breathing changes, your heart rate drops slightly, and your brain shifts out of fight mode. English became less of a subject and more of a tool to stay human. We started using simple rules without announcing them. No talking over each other. One decision at a time. If emotions rise, stop. Drink water. Name the feeling, not the blame. I feel scared. Not, you are wrong. These are not marriage tricks. They are brain hacks. Selling the house forced us to practice something uncomfortable, choosing connection over winning. There were moments I wanted to push. There were moments she wanted to withdraw. But every signature reminded us that we built this place together, and if we weren't careful, we could lose more than walls. At night, when emails were done, I practiced English the same way I practiced marriage. Short sentences. Real context. We decided. We agreed. We move forward. Saying we instead of I changed how the story sounded even to myself. Here's the quiet truth no one posts online. Love doesn't break during big moments. It erodes during rushed ones. When you stop listening because you think speed equals strength. Selling the house slowed us down just enough to notice that. In the end, the deal moved forward. The numbers settled. The house prepared to belong to someone else. But something else stayed intact. Not because we were perfect, but because we chose not to turn stress into an enemy. So if you're learning English while carrying life on your back, remember this. Progress doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from staying connected to the words, to the people, and to yourself. Basically, we didn't sell the house without losing each other. We learned how not to. Children feel everything. Have you noticed how children don't need explanations, yet somehow understand everything? They don't ask for long speeches. They watch your face. They hear the silence between words. In the middle of those 2 weeks in the United States, while adults talked about prices, contracts, and moving dates, my children were learning something else entirely: how change feels inside a family. And without knowing it, they became the quiet teachers of this story. The morning after we accepted the offer on the house, my youngest asked a simple question. Will my room remember me? Not will we move, not where will we go, but whether the room itself could remember. I froze for a second. Adults think memory lives in photos or phones. Children think memory lives in walls, floors, corners. That question stayed with me longer than any legal document. Here's something psychology explains very clearly. Children are emotional mirrors. Their brains are wired to read safety from their parents' tone, posture, and rhythm. When adults feel uncertain, children don't need the facts, they feel the vibration. That's why big life changes often show up in small behaviors. A child becomes quieter, or suddenly louder, or asks strange questions at strange times. That week, my son started counting boxes. Not playing with toys. Just counting boxes. 1, 2, 3, again and again. It looked meaningless, but it wasn't. Repetition calms the nervous system. It's the same reason slow, repeated English sentences help you learn better when life feels unstable. The brain loves predictability when emotions are messy. So I joined him. I counted out loud. Slowly. In English. 1 box. 2 boxes. 3 boxes. No lesson. No correction. Just presence. My pronunciation wasn't perfect. My grammar didn't matter. What mattered was rhythm. Calm voice. Shared moment. That's how real language learning happens inside safety. My daughter, on the other hand, became very practical. She asked, "Who will live here after us?" I said, "Another family." She nodded and said, "I hope they are kind." That was it. No sadness. No drama. Just empathy. Children don't cling to buildings. They cling to meaning. This is where many adults misunderstand learning, especially learning English. You think progress comes from pressure, from forcing yourself, from being strict. But neuroscience shows something different. The brain learns best when it feels emotionally regulated. Safety first. Language second. That's true for kids. It's true for you. That night, before sleep, we lay on the floor together. No beds. Just blankets. I told them one short sentence in English. Very slow. We are still a family. I repeated it. They repeated it. Not as a lesson, but as reassurance. Repetition builds memory. Emotion locks it in. You might be thinking, my life is too messy to learn English right now. But that's exactly when gentle learning matters most. Not long study sessions. Not complicated grammar. Just small, human sentences tied to real feelings. Like children do naturally. When parents argue less and listen more, children feel safer. When learners slow down and accept imperfection, language comes easier. It's the same pattern. Different context. Same brain. Before turning off the light, my youngest whispered, "The house can remember us. But we don't have to stay." That was the punchline I didn't know I needed. Because memory doesn't trap you. It travels with you. Children feel everything. And sometimes, they understand life better than adults with vocabulary ever could. English in quiet moments. Have you noticed how the most important moments in life are rarely loud? They don't announce themselves. They don't come with music or subtitles. They happen in silence, while waiting in line, washing dishes, or sitting alone in a car after a long day. During those 2 weeks in the US, I realized something unexpected. My English didn't improve during study time. It improved during the quiet moments when life slowed me down whether I wanted it or not. Most people think learning English needs motivation, discipline, or a perfect schedule. That's a lie your tired brain loves to believe. What it really needs is safety. When your nervous system feels safe, language flows. When it feels threatened by money, marriage tension, uncertainty, it shuts down like a phone in low battery mode. Those days, my marriage was in a fragile place. Selling the house forced conversations we had avoided for years. Big questions. Soft voices. Long pauses. After those talks, I couldn't study. But I still lived. And life kept offering English in small, quiet pieces. Standing in a grocery store aisle, I read labels slowly. Milk. Bread. Family size. In the car, I whispered simple sentences to myself. Today was hard. Pause. But we are still here. Slower. Clearer. No pressure to sound smart. Just real. There's a concept in neuroscience called low cognitive load learning. It means your brain absorbs information better when it's not overloaded. Quiet moments naturally lower that load. Your brain isn't fighting. It's listening. That's why a single sentence learned in peace stays longer than 10 pages memorized in stress. One evening, my wife and I sat on the floor, backs against the wall. No TV. No phones. Just tired people trying not to hurt each other with words. I didn't speak much English out loud. But in my head, I translated emotions gently. I feel scared. She feels tired. We both want the same thing. Language became a bridge, not a performance. This is where many learners quit. They think, if I can't study properly, I shouldn't study at all. That mindset kills progress faster than bad grammar. Quiet learning counts. Whispered English counts. Thinking in English counts. Naming your feelings in English slowly counts more than you think. My kids taught me this without knowing it. They asked simple questions. Are we moving? Will we come back? I answered slowly, choosing easy words. Not because of English level, but because clarity matters when emotions are big. And clarity is the heart of good language. By the end of those 2 weeks, my English didn't suddenly become fluent. But it became calmer, more honest, less afraid. And that's real progress. Language that grows with your life, not against it. Here's the punchline nobody tells you. You don't need more time to learn English. You need fewer distractions from your own thoughts. Quiet moments aren't empty. They're classrooms your brain actually enjoys attending. So next time life feels heavy, don't quit English. Just lower your voice. Let the quiet do the teaching. When emotions block learning. Have you noticed how English disappears exactly when you need it most? You know the word. You learned it before. But in the moment when life feels heavy, your mind goes blank, like a browser tab that suddenly crashes. During those 2 weeks in the United States, while selling the house and holding my family together, this happened to me every single day. And for the first time, I stopped blaming myself and started listening to what my brain was actually doing. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your brain doesn't care about your English goals when your emotions feel unsafe. It cares about survival. When stress shows up, relationship stress, money stress, family stress, your brain quietly pulls power away from the language center and sends it to the emotional alarm system. This isn't laziness. It's biology. One morning, I was talking to the real estate agent. Simple conversation. Basic words. Nothing difficult. And yet my chest felt tight, my thoughts slowed down, and my English came out broken and clumsy. After the call, I felt embarrassed. I wanted to judge myself. Instead, I sat down and said, very calmly, "My brain is tired, not stupid." That sentence changed everything. Neuroscience explains this clearly. When emotional load increases, working memory shrinks. That's the part of your brain that holds words while you use them. Less working memory means fewer words available. So when your marriage feels uncertain or your family is changing, English doesn't disappear, it gets pushed into the background like a quiet child in a loud room. During those days, my wife and I were careful with each other. Conversations were slow, sometimes silent. And I noticed something interesting. The same pace helped my English. When I slowed down emotionally, language slowly came back. Not fancy English, just real English. I started using very short sentences on purpose. I need time. This is hard. We are trying. I repeated them aloud while driving, while walking, while waiting. No textbook. No pressure. Just truth. Language sticks better when it carries emotion that feels safe. My children noticed the tension before we ever explained it. Kids always do. One evening, my son asked, "Are we losing the house?" I answered slowly, choosing simple words, almost like an English practice for myself. "We are selling it. But we are still a family." He nodded. That was enough. And somehow, that sentence stayed with me too. Psychology calls this emotional regulation. When you name feelings calmly, the brain relaxes. And when the brain relaxes, learning quietly resumes. You don't need motivation speeches. You need permission to be human first. If you're struggling with English right now, ask yourself a different question. Not why can't I learn, but what am I carrying emotionally? Because unresolved emotion is like noise. It doesn't stop the music forever, it just makes it harder to hear. That's why forcing yourself to study harder often backfires. Pressure adds more noise. What worked for me was softness, slower speech, kinder self-talk, accepting that some days, one honest sentence is enough practice. Here's the punchline most people miss. When emotions block learning, they're not your enemy. They're signals. They're telling you what needs care before progress. Ignore them, and English feels impossible. Respect them, and language quietly returns. So if today all you can say is one simple sentence, say it slowly. Mean it. Let it be real. Your brain will remember that far longer than any perfect grammar rule. Tiny routines that helped us. Nobody tells you that saving a marriage or your motivation often looks boring from the outside. No dramatic speeches. No sudden breakthroughs. Just tiny routines that feel almost too small to matter. During those 2 weeks in the US, while the house was being sold and our emotions were stretched thin, these small habits quietly kept us from falling apart. Every morning started the same way. Coffee. Silence. Not the angry kind, more like a truce. We sat at the table without phones. No fixing. No analyzing. Just being there. Sometimes I would say one simple sentence in English, slowly, like I was talking to my own nervous system. This is a new day. That was it. No grammar lesson. No pressure. Just a sentence tied to breath. Psychology has a name for why this works. The brain loves predictability when everything else feels unstable. Tiny routines lower cortisol, the stress hormone, and gently tell your brain, you're safe enough to keep going. When stress drops, learning becomes possible again. Not fast. Not perfect. But possible. In the afternoon, while boxes were stacked like silent witnesses, I practiced something even smaller. Naming actions as I did them. I open the box. I close the door. I wait. Childish. Maybe. Effective. Absolutely. Language sticks better when it's attached to movement and emotion. Your brain remembers what your body does. My wife had her own routine. A walk around the block every evening, no matter how tired she felt. Some days I joined. Some days I didn't. Marriage researchers say shared rituals, especially low-effort ones, build trust more reliably than big romantic gestures. Walking side by side without forcing conversation did more for us than any serious talk we tried to schedule. The kids surprised us the most. They created their own ritual. Every night, before sleep, they asked the same question: where will we wake up next? At first, that question hurt. Then it became grounding. It reminded us that stability isn't a place. It's how you answer fear. Calmly. Repeatedly. With honesty. I started answering them in very simple English, mixed with our language. Tomorrow, we wake up together. Slow. Clear. Reassuring. Children don't care about accent. They care about tone. And so does your inner learner. Neuroscience backs this up. When you pair language with emotional safety, your brain's memory circuits strengthen. That's why you remember random phrases from meaningful moments but forget vocabulary lists 5 minutes later. Emotion is the glue. Routine is the frame. One night, after a long day, nothing went right. A document was missing. The sale was delayed. We snapped at each other. Old patterns tried to come back. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of arguing, we both went quiet. Not avoidance. Regulation. Our nervous systems recognized the routine. Pause first, react later. I whispered another sentence, barely audible. We can do this slowly. That line wasn't just about English. It was about us. The funny thing is, these routines didn't make us happier overnight. They made us steadier. And steadiness is underrated. It's what keeps the bridge standing while the storm passes. So if you're struggling with English, with love, with motivation, don't look for a miracle. Look for a rhythm. Something small enough that your brain doesn't resist it. Something gentle enough that your heart doesn't run away. Because in the end, progress rarely arrives with fireworks. It shows up quietly, wearing the disguise of an ordinary day that didn't fall apart. Marriage is daily practice. People love to think marriage survives on big moments. A proposal, a wedding, a dramatic apology at the right time. But after 2 weeks in the US, in the middle of selling a house and rearranging a life, I realized something less romantic and more useful. Marriage survives on practice. Boring, repetitive, uncelebrated practice. The same kind you need when you're learning a language slowly, one sentence at a time, without applause. During those days, my wife and I didn't have energy for deep talks every night. We had schedules, documents, tired children, and emotions that showed up at the wrong time. Some mornings we spoke very little. Not because we were angry, because we were managing. And management, it turns out, is a skill. There was one afternoon when we sat in the car, parked outside the old house, not moving. The kids were quiet. That kind of quiet that feels like they're listening to more than words. I said one simple sentence in English, almost by habit. We need to talk later. Not dramatic. Not perfect grammar. Just clear. She nodded. That was enough for that moment. Psychology has an uncomfortable truth about long-term relationships. Love doesn't disappear suddenly. It erodes quietly when communication becomes optional. Your brain, under stress, wants shortcuts. Silence feels efficient. Avoidance feels peaceful. But over time, those shortcuts create distance. The same way skipping small English practice doesn't hurt today, but costs you confidence tomorrow. So I treated marriage the way I treated my English during those weeks. I didn't aim for fluency. I aimed for consistency. Short check-ins. Honest sentences. Repetition. Are you okay? I'm tired. Let's rest. These are not poetic lines, but they are functional. And function keeps systems alive. One evening, while washing dishes in a borrowed kitchen, my wife corrected my English gently. Not as a teacher, as a partner. And then she laughed and said, "Marriage is harder than English." That line stayed with me. Because it's true. English has rules. Marriage has people. And people change without warning. Neuroscience explains why daily practice matters more than emotional speeches. The brain builds trust through predictability. When someone shows up the same way, again and again, your nervous system relaxes. Safety increases. Learning improves. Love stabilizes. This is why routines matter more than promises. Promises excite the brain. Routines calm it. I started saying small English sentences out loud during normal moments. While driving. While folding clothes. While waiting. My wife did the same. Not for learning. For presence. Language became a bridge instead of a task. And marriage felt less heavy when it wasn't carrying everything alone. If you're watching this and struggling with English, with your relationship, with motivation, here's the quiet truth no one celebrates. Progress looks boring up close. It looks like showing up when nothing dramatic happens. It looks like repeating yourself. It looks like choosing patience over performance. Marriage doesn't need you to be fluent. It needs you to be willing. English doesn't need talent. It needs contact. Daily. Imperfect. Honest. By the end of those 2 weeks, I didn't feel victorious. I felt practiced. And that's better. Because practiced things don't disappear when life gets loud. Basically, both love and language fail for the same reason. People stop practicing them when they stop feeling exciting. What we didn't sell. There's a strange moment after the deal is done, after the papers are signed, after the keys are no longer yours. You expect relief. Or sadness. Or something dramatic. Instead, what comes is silence and a quiet question tapping your chest. So, what did we actually keep? The house was officially sold. Numbers changed owners. A new family would soon walk through the same front door. But that morning, while sitting in the car with my wife and kids, I realized something important. We didn't lose everything. We chose not to sell some things. And those things mattered more than square footage. In the back seat, my youngest was holding a small scratch-marked toy from the old house. It was broken. It had no market value. But it survived every move, every argument, every "we'll fix it later." That's when it hit me, life doesn't ask what you sold. It asks what you carried. During those 2 weeks in the US, I practiced English in a very different way. Not with lessons. With labels on memories. I would say, slowly, "This moment stays." Or "This one goes." Simple words. Clear meaning. My brain needed that clarity because emotions love to blur everything. Psychology explains this beautifully. When humans go through big transitions, moving, selling, changing family structure, the brain automatically searches for continuity. It asks, what stays the same so I don't disappear? That's why memories become anchors. Not random ones. Emotional ones. We didn't keep the dining table, but we kept the habit of eating together. We didn't keep the living room, but we kept the way we sat close after a long day. We didn't keep the walls, but we kept the conversations that slowly rebuilt trust when things felt fragile. One night, my wife said something very simple. The house helped us grow. It doesn't need to come with us. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was poetic, but because it was practical. Growth doesn't require storage space. For you learning English, this matters more than you think. Many people quit because they believe they must keep everything. All mistakes, all failures, all half-finished attempts. But language learning, like life, works better when you choose what to carry. You don't need every word you ever learned. You need the ones that help you speak when it matters. You don't need perfect grammar. You need clear meaning. You don't need confidence forever. You need courage for the next sentence. That week, I practiced by saying one honest line per day. I am tired. I am grateful. This is hard, but we are together. Real English. Emotional English. The kind your brain remembers because it's tied to feeling. Neuroscience backs this up. When language connects to emotion, memory strengthens. The brain says, this matters. Keep this. That's why textbook sentences fade, but real-life phrases stick. As we drove away from the house for the last time, there were no tears. Just a calm understanding. We didn't sell our story. We edited it. We kept the chapters that made us stronger. So here's the quiet punchline. Letting go doesn't make you empty. It makes room. And what you choose to carry will decide how heavy or how free your next chapter feels. What will you carry? There is a strange moment that happens after everything important is already decided. The house is sold. The boxes are gone. The plans are written down. And yet, your mind keeps asking one quiet question, usually when you're brushing your teeth or staring out a car window. What do I take with me now? Not furniture. Not documents. Something lighter. And heavier. 2 weeks in the United States taught me that life rarely asks what you want to carry. It asks what you can't put down. I tried to be practical. I told myself, we're moving forward. This is good. And it was. But my body didn't speak in logic. It spoke in flashes. The way my child's hand fit into mine the first day we entered that house. The sound of my wife crying quietly in the kitchen during a year we don't talk about much. The smell of coffee on mornings when love felt easy again. Science has a simple explanation for this. Emotional memory doesn't live where words live. It sits deeper, in systems designed to protect identity, not efficiency. That's why you forget what someone said, but you remember how they made you feel 10 years later. Your brain isn't sentimental. It's strategic. It keeps what shaped you. That understanding changed how I practiced English during this time. I stopped chasing perfect sentences. I started naming what mattered. Slowly. Clearly. I will carry this. This moment stays. Short phrases. Honest pauses. When language is tied to emotion, retention increases. Not because you try harder, but because your brain decides it's worth keeping. I noticed my children doing the same thing, without knowing any theory. They didn't talk about selling the house. They talked about the crack in the wall where they measured their height. They talked about the neighbor who waved every morning. Their memories weren't organized. They were alive. That's when I realized adults don't lose memories because we age. We lose them because we rush. In marriage, this question becomes sharper. When you go through a hard season together, you can't carry everything forward. Some habits have to stay behind. Some words shouldn't come with you. But some memories must be protected on purpose. Shared survival. Silent forgiveness. The moments you didn't give up, even when it would have been easier. I asked my wife, one night, very simply, "What will you carry from this house?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "That we didn't quit." That sentence stayed with me more than any address ever could. It became part of my internal vocabulary. Not advanced English. Essential English. If you're learning a language while your life is unstable, here's something practical you can do. Don't practice random topics. Practice your story. One memory at a time. Speak it slowly. Repeat it on different days. This method is supported by cognitive psychology. Repetition combined with emotional relevance creates stronger neural pathways. In simple terms, your brain listens when the story is yours. So let me ask you something. Quietly, without pressure. When this chapter of your life ends, this job, this relationship, this version of yourself, what will you carry? Not what looks impressive. Not what others expect. What memory will stay even if everything else is gone? Because in the end, we don't move forward empty-handed. We move forward holding the things that made us who we are. And whether you're learning English, rebuilding a marriage, or starting again from a tired place, that's not weakness. That's proof you lived. A quiet promise forward. There is a strange moment after a big decision, when nothing dramatic happens anymore. No arguments. No packing. No signatures. Just silence. That's where I found myself at the end of these 2 weeks in the United States, standing in a rented place that didn't smell like us yet, watching my family move slowly, like people learning a new rhythm. We had sold the house. On paper, it was done. But emotionally, my brain was still checking the old rooms, like a habit that didn't know it was unemployed. That's how the human brain works. Neuroscience calls it neural residue. When something meaningful ends, your mind keeps firing the old pathways, even when the situation is gone. It's not weakness. It's loyalty. Your brain doesn't abandon important things easily: relationships, homes, identities, even dreams you once believed in. That's why learning English, or anything new, feels harder during change. Your mental energy is split. One part is protecting the past. Another part is trying to survive the present. There's not much left for perfection. And that's okay. One morning, while making cheap coffee in a borrowed kitchen, my youngest asked a simple question. Is this our home now? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say something smart, something comforting. But instead, I chose honesty, slowly, clearly, in very simple English. Yes. For now. That sentence mattered more than any grammar rule. Because language is not about sounding correct. It's about being understood by others, and by yourself. I realized then that this entire journey wasn't really about selling a house. It was about choosing what kind of person I want to be when things are uncertain. The kind who shuts down. Or the kind who stays present, even when the future feels unfinished. Psychology tells us that meaning reduces stress more effectively than control. You don't need to control every outcome. You need a reason to keep showing up. For me, that reason was small and human. My marriage, my kids, and the quiet promise I didn't say out loud until that moment. The promise was this: I will not rush my life the way I used to rush learning English. I will not punish myself for pauses. I will practice patience the same way I practice listening, slowly, imperfectly, but consistently. So I kept my routine simple. One short English sentence a day, connected to real life. One honest conversation with my wife, even if it felt awkward. One moment of attention with my children, without checking what we lost. And something unexpected happened. My motivation didn't come back as excitement. It came back as calm, as stability, as a quiet confidence that said, you don't have to win today. You just have to stay. If you're watching this and feeling stuck with English, with relationships, with a version of yourself that no longer fits, remember this. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means carrying the right memories, not all of them. So I'll ask you the same question that stayed with me after selling the house. What memory will you always carry? Not the one that hurts the most, but the one that reminds you who you are when things fall apart. For me, it's this image. My family in an empty room, tired, uncertain, but still together. No furniture. No plan. Just presence. That's enough to build anything again. Here is a curiosity-driven, emotional closing ending in English, written in slow, clear, natural American English, suitable for YouTube US 2026, with a strong call to action and a hook for the next video. I don't know what memory you will carry 10 years from now. Maybe it won't be a big moment. Maybe it won't be a perfect sentence in English. Maybe it will be something small. A quiet night. A simple word you finally understood. A choice you made when it was easier to give up. Selling the house taught me this. You can leave a place, but the meaning stays with you. And learning English is the same. You don't carry every word. You carry the confidence. You carry the courage to keep speaking, even slowly. In the next video, I will share what happened after we sold the house. How one unexpected moment with my family changed the way I see language, love, and starting again in America. So if you are learning English, if you are rebuilding your life, or if you just need a quiet place to breathe and listen, subscribe to this channel. Stay with me. The story is not finished yet. That's all for today. I will make more videos like this in the future. Please subscribe to watch them.